What is up, guys? It is Blake, B Nasty, Indigo Lulz, Blakey Smalls, whatever you want to call me. And today we're going to try to answer the question, is Uniqlo a fast fashion brand? Some of you might hear that and say, yes, they're exactly like H&M and Zara and all those other companies. And others might hear that and say, no, they're really big and really cheap, but it's just basic clothes like t-shirts and stuff like that. I don't think that's fast fashion. And there's actually a lot of people that think both ways. So my goal today is to create common ground and a mutual understanding of, is Uniqlo fast fashion? So as a disclaimer up front, guys, please bear with me. I'm going to try to be super mindful of my tone and try to be as balanced as possible. But I do know that videos like this can come across as holier than thou or preachy or kind of virtue signaling, and I really do not want that. My goal is just to try to create common ground within the fashion community and at least have us have a understanding of what Uniqlo is and maybe some of their shortcomings and some of their strengths throughout the years. So with that being said, let's first get a definition behind what is fast fashion. I think a broad definition would be a business model within the fashion industry that prioritizes profit over people, the planet, and everything in between. So obviously there's going to be a spectrum of where different companies fall in that. Certain companies are going to be a lot worse, and then others might be somewhere kind of in between. And hopefully we'll answer an even broader question than just, is Uniqlo fast fashion, but is it ethical to shop there? And if so, what are the implications of that? So I'm going to be going into three different parts. Number one, the way that they brand and market themselves, the ethics or some of maybe the shortcomings that they've had over the years in terms of how they treat their workers, the conditions they're in, and all of the things like that. And also sustainability, what's their impact on the environment? What sort of responsibility are they taking? And so we're going to look into all of those. Let's get into it. Let's talk first about who Uniqlo is and how they brand themselves. Uniqlo is the third largest clothing brand in the world. They have over 2,000 physical stores and they do about $25 billion in revenue on an annual basis, which is massive, right? They're behind only H&M and Zara. And one of the very distinct things about Uniqlo versus those other retailers is Zara and H&M typically grab styles from major fashion houses, stuff that shows up on the runway, things that are trendy with influencers, and they participate in these micro trends, which might last a month or 2 months, and then it's on to the next thing because the celebrities and influencers are already on to the next thing, and that's what people want now. But Uniqlo, they mainly focus on a lot of core items within the wardrobe, just think basic t-shirts and jeans and jackets and things like that. And it's much less trend driven. And instead of kind of stealing from the designers, instead they collaborate with them. They have worked with Christophe Lemaire, J.W. Anderson, Jill Sander, Daiki Suzuki, and many others that are very esteemed within the fashion community. And this has given Uniqlo a certain reputation of being kind of the good guys because they work with the designers, they don't steal from them. And I think it's really benefited them in getting a lot of people within the men's fashion and women's fashion community to pay attention to Uniqlo and think of them as, oh, it's not quite fast fashion. But that does not mean that they are completely blameless. So let's talk about their ethics next. Uniqlo, like a lot of corporations, they have come out and said they do a lot of things to ensure fair wages and healthy working conditions and really doing a lot of things to kind of ensure that it's a positive workplace. But there kind of raises questions of who is auditing these and who is really double checking them. And there's really just not a lot of transparency around these things. So we don't really have a sense of how Uniqlo is progressing and measuring against these things. And as a result, it's hard to say if they're actually making real strides towards them. And ultimately, there have been some skeletons that have come out of their closet that really make you question what other things could be hiding there. There was 2 incidents in 2015 where there was undercover investigations in 3 different factories that Uniqlo had been working with for about 20 years each. And they employed thousands and thousands of garment workers, and there was issues of abuse, of stolen wages, of improper working conditions, and just a lot of other things. And when this came out, Uniqlo ultimately distanced themselves from all of these factories and severed ties. And what happened is they ended up going bankrupt. And I think that really speaks to the power and impact that Uniqlo can have with their suppliers and partners. And I think there's a certain responsibility that we really need to hold Uniqlo to take ownership of, because success and scale brings a broader responsibility than smaller brands. So Uniqlo, instead of distancing themselves from these factories and saying, I don't want anything to do with that, that sounds like a PR nightmare, I think they could have came in and said, hey, what are we doing to pay the workers a fair wage? Are they getting enough time to rest? Are they getting time off? Are they being overworked? Are we having any issues with the air quality or any sort of dangerous substances that are within the factory, which was happening in all of them? And Uniqlo just really didn't do anything. In fact, there's still an issue from some Indonesian garment workers. About 2,000 of them have unpaid wages from 2015, which means that they never got paid for hours worked on producing these garments for Uniqlo. And Uniqlo has basically said, hey, that's not my problem. You need to take that up with the factory. But it's kind of unsettling because the workers are just asking for $5.5 million, which sounds like a lot, but when you divide it by the 2,000 garment workers, it's only about $2,700 per worker. And when you compare that to the $957 million that Uniqlo made in 2015 alone in profit, it's profit, not revenue, $957 million, it only ended up being 6%, maybe 7% of their total profit. And it seems like a very avoidable controversy, but it's one instead of dealing with and kind of, really trying to make amends and have a more positive outcome. Instead, they just kind of distance themselves and don't really do a lot about it. They've also had issues with getting linked to the Xinjiang cotton scandal, which last year in 2021, basically it came out that the Chinese government was using Muslim minorities to live in internment camps, basically a prison, and then working for free to pick cotton. And as a result, that region had about 20% of the world's cotton production, and tons of brands, not just Uniqlo, got caught up in it, including like Burberry, which is a luxury brand. And it just really was not a good look. And instead of taking accountability for it, again, Uniqlo said, hey, we did nothing about that. We audited our supply chain. We're good. Don't ask us about that. And then within a few weeks, they got caught with some, I think, shorts that got caught up in customs, and they were actually using Xinjiang cotton, so they lied. And I think the thing is, like Uniqlo, they say a lot of really nice things about what they're doing and how they're ensuring that their workers are being treated fairly and have a really positive working environment. But there isn't any transparency into how they're doing that, how they're progressing and making strides of improvement. There's no third-party source to really help us know if that's happening or if Uniqlo is just saying it is, so I guess it is. And one thing I've learned, guys, by working at a really big corporation is when you are doing positive things, typically you're talking about it. You're doing press releases. You're telling your employees about it. You want people to know, hey, look at me. I'm doing good things. Because it's going to make your shareholders, your investors, have more confidence in your business and feel like you're heading in the right direction. So the silence from Uniqlo, I feel it really is pretty telling of maybe the lack of progress that they've had. Or if they have been making progress, I'd really like to see them be more vocal about it and really just give us more transparency into that, because I think that could make a lot of people feel better about shopping at Uniqlo, myself included. Lastly, let's talk about how Uniqlo works with sustainability. And I actually think they've done some really neat things over the last few years, which is a good sign. They released their Re-Uniqlo program, which basically will take secondhand Uniqlo garments. So if you buy something in 3 years, you say, I don't want this anymore. Instead of throwing it away, you can take it to Uniqlo and they'll try to recycle it into a new garment. Or if they can't, they'll actually send it to a developing nation that needs clothes and help them that way. So I think that's a really great initiative. I'd love to see more of that. I think one of the concerns that I have is because the garments are so cheap usually, I don't know how motivated someone would be to take them to Uniqlo. I wonder how many of them end up in the garbage versus in that program. So I'd like to see them do some more marketing and just raising awareness for that program, but I think it's a great start. They also have their in-house tailoring or alterations, which I think is a great way to give more value to people and kind of customize and personalize their clothes so they're more likely to wear them for a longer time. And beyond that, they've been trying to make some strides in using solar panels, optimizing their supply chain, reusing polyester, reducing the total amount of water consumption they make in the production of the clothes. But again, you kind of run into the same issue with the ethics piece. There's no third-party auditing. There's not a lot of transparency. They don't release all of their suppliers and partners within the supply chain. And guys, in the global economy we're in, it can oftentimes be difficult to track all of the suppliers you work with. Let's take cotton alone. Okay, you know who the cotton supplier is, but do you know who made the pesticides? And if you know who made the pesticides, you know who gave them the chemicals to do that? And then who distributed those? Who got them from point A to point B? You see what I'm saying? It can get very complicated very quickly to ensure that every single piece in the moving parts, that could be hundreds or thousands of moving parts, is in accord with the standards that you have. So some more transparency there could really alleviate a lot of concerns, which I really hope Uniqlo will do within the next few years. And lastly, I think just one of the fundamental issues issues with Uniqlo for sustainability is just the size and scale they operate at. They sell things at very low prices, low margins, and it's a volume, meaning they're looking for customers to buy 20, 30, 50 things from them in a year. They're not looking just to sell you a shirt and then you wear it for the next 10 years or you never need another one again. Like, their business model needs people to be going through clothes and needing to buy new clothes. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. They have too much infrastructure, too many stores, too many employees. They need people to continue to buy clothes. So that's problematic because obviously the best thing you can do for sustainability is produce less, sell less, buy less, because it uses less natural resources. And they're just really not in a position to do that with their current business model. So I'd like to see them try to make strides towards that as well, but I don't know how realistic that would be in the long run. All right, so let's summarize everything we've talked about. I think Uniqlo has quite a bit of positive things going on for them, right? They are not participating in micro trends like Zara, H&M, or Shein. They are focusing more on clothes that kind of have a basic or core wardrobe aspect to them, and that gives them more longevity, which means people are less likely to throw them away. They're less disposable, which I think is a really good thing. I think they've also made some legitimate strides towards being more sustainable with like their Re-Uniqlo program, the alterations, also the solar panels, and kind of optimizing their supply chain. All very good things. I think the price points they're coming in at are very attainable for a lot of people. I do question though how they're able to accomplish that, and some of these stories about the different factory workers kind of allude to what might be behind the curtain there. So on the negative side, obviously, is the two big things is number one, I think fundamentally they have a business challenge in being sustainable. They are operating at a low margin, high volume business, meaning they need to sell a lot of clothes. It is very tough for them to offset that, regardless of how many alternative energy or sustainability initiatives they have some headwinds against them from an environmental standpoint. And secondly, something that I repeated throughout this video is they just don't have enough transparency or a third-party source to verify claims that they're making towards these initiatives. Things sound great. If they can accomplish them, that would be amazing. And I'd probably be a fan of Uniqlo, frankly, if we could get that. But as of right now, there's just not enough information about what they've done and how they're progressing towards it. So let's answer the question once and for all. Is Uniqlo a fast fashion brand? My answer based on what I've said today is yes. Now keep in mind that fast fashion is kind of a spectrum, right? You have like the worst of the worst, like a Shein or Shine. How do you say it? I don't know. I don't care. They are the worst. And there's other brands like Zara and H&M, and I think Uniqlo is better than those three, but they're definitely a far cry from a sustainable or like a real workers' rights, like champion brand. And until I see some more evidence from them, I'm probably not going to change my opinion. All right, guys, so I'm going through the edit, and I just really want to make sure that I get this final part right, because I think it's the most important part of the entire video. I just said I think Uniqlo is a fast fashion brand, not the worst, but certainly a fast fashion brand. So does that mean if you buy stuff from Uniqlo, if you like shopping at Uniqlo, does that make you a bad person? Should you feel guilty about it? Not necessarily. I think there's a lot of circumstances where it's the most affordable, highest quality option for people, and Uniqlo just makes sense. I do think if you have the means to buy something that's a little bit higher quality, that has more transparency and openness into how the workers are being treated, the type of factories they're working in, and ultimately their impact on the environment, I think it would be a good use of your money to support those brands instead. And if you say, well, I really like Uniqlo, I'd like to see Uniqlo do that, I do too. And I think we have the unique ability to vote with our dollars, meaning the way we spend our money and the things that we can ask of Uniqlo as customers, a lot of times they're going to end up following through on those things. Take a look at H&M. They didn't have their conscious line. Now they do, because customers are saying, hey, we want more sustainable and eco-friendly options. It's the same thing for Uniqlo. If more and more people are asking them, hey, can you give us more transparency about the factories you guys are using? How are the workers being treated? What do those factories look like? What are the procedures that you're doing? How are you enforcing them? Etc., etc. They're going to end up doing that. So I would encourage you all to be a little bit more vocal about that. If this is stuff that you care about, speak up about it. And chances are, if enough people do, they're going to follow through with it. If you're someone that doesn't have the means to explore alternative options, I would say ultimately, and this is true for anyone, try to buy less. If you're buying, let's say, 10 things from Uniqlo a year, try to buy 9 or try to buy 8. try to just buy a little bit less so that you could be more sustainable in your practices. Again, you don't need to punish yourself and feel like you're a terrible person if you do buy, 10 things, but make it a goal for yourself to gradually reduce the amount of things you buy. And I'm speaking to all the clothing enthusiasts on this channel as well. I think regardless if something costs $10 or $1,000, if you're buying a lot of it, that is not very sustainable. So I've become more conscious of that over probably the last 9 months or so, and I would encourage you all to do the same as well. So anyways, guys, that is my thoughts for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section, did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Did I leave something out? Let me know. Let's have a conversation about it, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.